To our third and final lecture for the first full day of the Black Music Symposium. I am Dr. Jeff Murdoch. I am the Director of Choral Activities and the founding director of the newly created Arkansas Center for Black Music, the umbrella that covers the Black Music Symposium. If you're watching on our live stream, we encourage you to interact in the chat. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. Also, we are very happy to have Glendower Jones and Classical Vocal Reprints in our North Lobby. We want to make sure that as good as he has been to the classical music community, that we are continuing to support our local vendors. So hashtag get it from Glendower. Without any further delay, I would like to introduce you to our final lecturer of the day. Dr. Nathaniel Gumbs is the Director of Chapel Music at Yale University, a world-renowned organist and a dear friend, and I'm very excited to welcome him today to talk about the organ music of Black composers. Please welcome Dr. Nathaniel Gumbs.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm appreciative and grateful to be here after we got snowed out and I could not make it the last time. And thank you to Dr. Murdoch for having me. I truly appreciate him. He's a dear brother. But I thought he loved me, but I'm questioning it now after he put me after my dear sister, who's the most brilliant mind in the world, who's teaching on 2 continents, Dr. Alicia Jones. But I'll give my Sunday school lesson and go on to the airport. I am overjoyed and delighted to present a topic that is so near and dear to me. As some of you may know, my higher educational journey was spent predominantly white institutions. I am truly grateful for those institutions where I learned the canon from Dietrich Buxtehude to Olivier Messiaen. However, I honestly knew very little works by composers that looked like me. My only resource at the time was the dated African American organ anthology edited by Mickey Thomas Terry. I can vividly remember feeling bad or embarrassed whenever I performed a concert because all of the composers were part of the Western European canon, and I felt like I was letting my people down. While working on my doctorate, the time came for me to select a topic for my lecture recital, and I spent sleepless nights trying to decide what to research and went back and forth with my professor, David Higgs, on what should I present. I mean, I play all the works, but I don't know what to even talk about that's not already on the bookshelves. And clear as day, something said, Nat, do research on a topic that is near and dear to you, like I said, and underrepresented. I remember playing a few character pieces by the Nigerian composer Fela Showande and was always intrigued by his compositional style. He had a wonderful way of intertwining his Western African sounds and rhythms with his Western European structure and form. That led to me working with an ethnomusicologist at the Eastman School of Music and coming up with a topic entitled The Intercultural Works of Fela Showande, and digging into how Showande combined his native Yoruba culture and sound with his Western European training. The more and more I read on him, and that was probably the hardest task because there was very little research scholarship on his works, but the more I read on him, I felt I saw myself finally in an organist and an organ composer. Like Shawande, I'm a church boy. I grew up in the church, and in the black church, if you're playing an instrument, the piano or the Hammond organ, the pipe organ, you play them all. I mean, you speak to many musicians today, Hammond organists, they probably started on the drums or the bass, and then they migrated to the keyboard. In my church, the Bronx, we call it the Episcopal Church because we sang Handel, we sang Messiah every year, and we sang the latest Kirk Franklin, we sang all the Smallwood, and we also would shout off an anthem. So I grew up in the church where all keyboard instruments were the primary instrument in the church and not just the pipe organ, so we had to migrate between them all. And like Shawande, he was also a jazz musician. He was a Nigerian musician, but was also very intrigued in the Western canon. Fela Showande was a Nigerian composer, organist, and musicologist of the 20th century. He is best known for being one of the first Nigerian performers and musicologists for sharing the history of West African music, namely the Nigerian music of the Yoruba culture. Shawande spent the early years of his life in Nigeria before studying abroad in London, where he earned professional degrees and awards, and later ended his life or his career in the United States, where he studied and lectured at several universities. Shawande is an intercultural musician and composer because of his great exposure to his native land, of course, his studies and experiences in Europe, and his research and compositions based on American music, specifically the Negro spirituals. A great deal of musical elements from all three continents can be seen throughout his works. You hear Yoruba melodies and African rhythms, you see Western European form and style, and you also hear the American Negro spiritual. Showande's musical training began at an early age as a boy soprano in the choir at the Cathedral Church of Christ in Lagos. He was exposed to a great choral and organ literature of Western European canon, or the Western European canon, under his choir master and organist T.K.E. Phillips. In 1934, Shawande moved to London, where he obtained the Bachelor of Music degree. He became a fellow at the Royal College of Organists and is one of the first Africans to receive the prestigious British FRCO diploma, the highest British certification for organ playing. He also became a fellow of the Trinity College of Music. Shawande developed a great admiration for the American Negro spiritual. Although he was African and not African American, he had a similar story and could empathize with the slave narrative. Unlike African Americans who were taken from their land, his country was invaded, stripped of its own identity, and he was even chastised at home for wanting to study and practice his native Yoruba culture. Shawande composed approximately 20 pieces for the organ, for solo organ, of which Sado categorizes in three sections: liturgical pieces, preludes and postludes, and concert pieces. I will now play a setting of Go Down Moses. The words that ring out in my head in the refrain is, "Let my people go." I'm sorry, is the sound on from back there in the booth? There's a hand up saying, hold on, I think. Okay, we're good. Go Down Moses. For some reason, it's not playing. I'll continue. We won't stay there. I'll come back to Go Down Moses. Oh, actually, 1 second. Here it is. Connection issues. That's not working out. Let's keep going. I jokingly say that Florence Beatrice Price is the new J.S. Bach in the organ community. Very seldom do I go to an organ program and not see one of her pieces played in the program. Price is considered the mother of African American classical music. She was a prolific composer and had two major downfalls against her. One, she was black. Two, she was a woman. Florence was never given the notoriety or respect she deserved as an esteemed composer and performer while she was living. Price was an accomplished organist who studied at the New England Conservatory of Music, studying with Henry Dunham. While studying at the New England Conservatory of Music, the famous composer at the time, performer Alexander Guillemot from Paris, came to the conservatory to give a master class. If some of you are, conservatory students, when artists come, of course, teachers choose the best students to present or represent the school when they come to give a master class. And in this master class, Florence Price was chosen to play one of his works, actually, his Sonata Number 1 in D minor. I know that her first sonata in the same key, same three movements. There's a huge Allegro maestoso opening movement with a huge introduction, followed by sonata allegro form. The second movement is a more lyrical piece, introducing the the oboe, stopping the organ, having a dialogue with the flute, and the last movement is just a huge French toccata. If you compare or put the two pieces side by side, you can tell she was heavily influenced by this work. Obviously, I haven't spoken to her because she died in 1953, but I honestly think that part of her reason for writing this piece or composing this piece based on Guimarães' sonata is that she was saying, I have a voice in this field, and my music is just as good, or not even better, than some of the folks in the canon. I played this in the program last night. I played her sonata, just the last two movements, but I want to play just the last movement of this work for you. This is the finale from her Sonata Number 1 in D minor. We good in the booth? For video? Perfect. There it is. What happened just now? Yeah, sorry. Take two. Take three, rather. Okay. All right, you got the gist of it. I don't think you want to hear it a third time. I just spoke about two dead composers, so Shirwande and Price. However, there are many living composers of African American descent, and for those who are not familiar with the King of Kings collection by GIA Publication, there are 4 volumes, and it's organ works by living and dead black composers. One of the contemporary composers is Carl Haywood. Carl Haywood is professor emeritus at Norfolk State University, And Carl spent over 40 years of his life in front of a choir, but has degrees in the organ. And now that Carl has retired, he cannot stop writing. And I love it. I love it. One of the pieces I played last night, well, two of them, Spirit Fantasy, which was dedicated to me and two other black organists. It's based on the spiritual Every Time I Feel the Spirit. And then I closed the program last night with improvisation on We Shall Overcome. And I think I told the story that we were at the Hampton University Ministers Conference in, Jesus, I can't remember when, what year this was, maybe 2015 or so. And every Thursday evening is the culmination of the conference. We have a huge concert, and it opens with an organ prelude. That year, Carl Haywood played this improvisation on We Shall Overcome, and I mean, blew the roof off of the place with this huge improvisation. And my dear mentor, Professor Jimmy Abington, who was the editor of that series, African American Church Music Series through GIA, was sitting in the audience. After the concert, I've never seen Jimmy Abington run that fast. He ran to Carl and said, "Wait, is that published?" Carl said, "No, I just improvised this." He says, "I need this publication in print next week." So Carl went home, got a recording of what he played, and actually put the music to paper. And a year later or so, it was published through GIA, and that's probably one of the most famous pieces known by a black living composer today for organ music is improvisation on We Shall Overcome. You will hear it probably at every church during February or King Sunday in January. This is the improvisation on We Shall Overcome. I'm gonna try this video one more time. I think it's gonna work. I have faith. Okay. Thank you. In conclusion, organ music by black folks is nothing new. It seems to be the new phenomenon since I would say we're in this post-Floyd era, and everyone wants to be inclusive and diverse, but Florence Price probably, well, it dates around the same time as Max Reger, who is probably most known in the organ world over her, although her works are just as important. So, I mean, composers such as Florence Price, William Grant Still, Eugene Hancock, Mark Fax, Eugene Simpson, names like that, they've been composing for forever. However, their works are just now coming to light. And like I said when I began my presentation, that as a student, I was very hurt going on the concert stage and just playing Bach, playing Vidor, playing Messiaen, playing Vierne, but not playing the works of my people. So I encourage you to study. There's many resources out there. The King of Kings collection, the African American organ music collection through Morning Star Publication, and various other works as well that are not in a compilation series. When I started my career as a performer, many times I wanted to give up because I looked at I go to AGO conventions, or I go to turn to the back of the AGO magazine I get monthly, and there are no faces or no one that looks like me. Many times in the career, I wanted to give up. I said, I see a lot of black organists, but they're just playing in church. But I wanted to be both in the church and on the concert stage. But something in me made me keep going. This performance you see here, you saw it in both the Price and in this We Shall Overcome. That was a concert I did at the height of the pandemic. I think maybe May 20th, 2020. And in this concert, which is my first concert that was aired via live stream, where I think was a turning point in my career. That's when after this concert is when I got management, when I signed to management, and I mean, gigs kept coming left and right. And I was able to finally be myself and not try to be the organist that I grew up seeing at these PWIs or playing the literature they played, but I can authentically go on stage and be Nathaniel Gumbs and bring all that I had within me as a black person, as a black performer. Yeah, I can play the Western canon, but I can also play the works of my people, and I actually feel more connected playing a Florence Price piece, playing a Carl Haywood piece, playing a piece by William Grant Still. I can feel the Africanism in their works. So I encourage you all to go outside the canon. The canon is great. I love Beethoven. I love Mozart. I love Bach. But there are many great works, such as a Florence Price, such as a William Grant Still, or such as is a huge work by, of course, Mark Fax, yes, as well. So keep studying and go beyond the canon. That's all I have for you. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think there's Q. Oh, there are two questions that way. I think there's a person coming out. Well, this room is very reverberant.
Having grown up in the black church, having grown up playing piano as a kid in church, and playing Hammond organ as a kid in the church, I was never exposed to playing the pipe organ. So can you tell us a little bit about how you became exposed and where you developed your love for playing the organ?
Sure. So I think I began playing at the age of 10 or 11. I'm a church boy, grew up in church every Sunday, and no one in my family plays music. No one in my family. But I was so intrigued by the church musicians, and I said, Mom, I want to learn how to do that. She says, huh? So Christmas, I said, can you buy me a keyboard? And she bought me this little rinky-dink 49-key keyboard. And I don't know if you remember this. You're all young. This crew. Remember the 49-key keyboard that came with a songbook? I would teach myself with the hymnal and that songbook to read music and play by ear. As a matter of fact, the first song I played was Sissy Houston's The Preacher's Wife album, The Lord is My Shepherd. That's the first song I played by ear. And I started to teach myself to read music and using the New National Baptist hymnal as a resource. So eventually, I think at 11 or 12, my mom went back to the church musician and said, this boy is growing and teaching himself. I don't know what to do. Can y'all do something? They said, come on. So like I said, in my church, the Episcopal Baptist Church in the Bronx, Trinity Baptist Church, we had a Hammond piano, and we had a pipe organ. Well, I thought it was a pipe organ, a digital organ, a digital pipe organ. And every fifth Sunday, which is I don't know why this is, but in the black church, fifth Sunday is an occasion. So something special happened. Either the kids are there or something, it's an occasion. And it comes every 4 times a year. And at that age, 12 or 11, I was introduced to my Batman at the time, Professor Jimmy Abington. And he would play the organ. He would direct the choir. He would stomp that piano. I wanted to be Jimmy Abington. I wanted to be him. So my influence to the pipe organ or to church music or to black sacred music was through Jimmy Abington. And every time he came to town, I didn't have a teacher yet, he would give me an assignment. And I prepare it, and I play the anthem for the choir. This little kid, 13-year-old kid, can barely reach the pedals. I would play on piano or the organ. And that was my influence. And one time, I wasn't supposed to play the pipe organ. I was supposed to play only the Hammond and the piano because the pipe organ is for adults. You don't touch that organ. Kids don't play on that organ. So I used to sneak in the church on Saturday nights when I knew the pastor wasn't there and the musicians weren't there and teach myself how to play the pipe organ. And then one day I got caught. They said, who's that on the organ? I was like, it's me. They said, boy, that's you? Next Sunday morning, I had a solo playing I Am Thine, O Lord. I never forget. Playing I Am Thine for the whole church. And then the church actually collectively put money together and sent me off to, bought me a piano, an acoustic piano. I finally got a piano. And then they started to pay for my lessons through Gregory Hopkins at the Compton Avenue Baptist Church. That's my upbringing and how I got introduced to the pipe organ. Yes.
Dr. Gumbs, first of all, I'm just marveling at the cast of practitioners that Dr. Murdoch has put together, largely because you are highly esteemed among us as an organist due to, yes, your collegiality, but in what you shared with us, you also talked about the merits of oral transmission and self-guided study. And to talk about that, having risen to where you have risen in terms of your perch in an Ivy League institution, I really think folks would do well to listen to how he talked about his formation. In particular, I would love for you to share with us a little bit about how you navigate intergenerational relationships, because your peers esteem you. But that passing comment you said about the Carl Haywood piece where it was dedicated to you, for lay people that might seem like a flex, and it is, but we welcome it. This is family. We celebrate all of these ways that we are commended. But it also suggests to me, particularly with this instrument of dominance, that this elder is acknowledging the next generation. And so how do you cultivate those intergenerational relationships, and how can these students learn about the merits of apprenticeship through your story?
Yeah, one thing that I thank you for that question. That's a great question. Thank you. Of course, you would ask a great question. One thing that was near and dear to me as a kid growing up was watching my elders. And I grew up in a black community. I grew up around black folks. I grew up in a black city, the Bronx, New York. Everything around me was black, 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 black. And it was black excellence. And one thing that I identified with, that I had a hard time going to school, PWIs, was I was always influenced by the elder black community. I thought Jimmy Abington hung the moon. I met Carl Haywood, and I thought he was one of the greatest conductors. When I was an undergraduate, I used to drive 1 hour and 30 minutes one way to the great Metropolitan Baptist Church in D.C., where Nolan Williams was the minister of music, Richard Smallwood was on piano, John Stoddard was on organ. Victor Simonson was on organ. I mean, Jason Max Ferdinand was one of the choir directors in the church. So, I mean, this was musical heaven. I only saw black excellence through growing up and learning. I mean, talk about a fish in a sea, or an ocean, that was me. I never forget the Sunday morning hymn was Blessed Assurance. Richard Small was on piano. And Nolan had a way of throwing you out there. Nat, go conduct the morning hymn. I said, Richard's playing though. God, I don't care, go play. So I'm conducting Richard Small on Blessed Assurance, it's opening hymn. But that being said was that I always honored the elders because of what they've done, the contribution they've made to the field, and the way they poured into me. I've started this career at a very early age. I think I started playing for the church when I was 12. I met Jimmy Abington around that same time. And the stories he's imparted in me, I've never met Wendell P. Whalum, but I can tell you so many Whalum stories, so many Morehouse stories. Carl Haywood, when I met him, he immediately gravitated towards me and took me under his wing. So even now, I have to mount up to or mount up to the crown they've placed on my head, which I think I have to even grow tall enough to wear. And with that being said, I always respected them. Even Jimmy Abington, he's not a performer now. He is more of a scholar and a church musician. He would tell you now he does not play organ concerts. But there is something that Jimmy Abington has to offer the world at large that you cannot ignore. So I call him for everything. Carl Haywood, I call Haywood, write a piece for me, do something, or anything. I can call him at midnight. Dr. Alicia Jones, she's my dear sister, but I see her again today, earlier in her presentation. I marvel like, whoa, this woman is brilliant. Dr. Murdoch, Grammy Award winning, Dr. Immorja Roberson, who has probably the most, I mess with him, but I'm very serious. He can say, I'm about to use the bathroom, and he'll have 1,000 likes on Facebook. I don't know what he does, but these are models that have been in my corner since I've been an adolescent. So, yes, having a piece dedicated to me by someone who I revere and honor, I think it's a token of appreciation that I would never forget. However, I think my respect and level of learning and continuously being a student, even now, they see that and they honor that and say, I want to put something in your name. That's one of a few pieces that people have dedicated to me because of my work and tedious work of keep going and keep trying to get better. Even management is not the end goal for me. I want more in my career, and I'm going to forever be a student.
Hello.
Hello. I can't see, so I'm sorry. I'm like...
Right. I'm a multi-talented musician. I play multiple instruments, including organ. My question for you, thank you. When you play, would you say that you're able to translate the message through the Black composers you're studying? And how did you discover those composers?
I love that question. That's so fun. I think I told you when I began studying the organ, I would want to only play the canon. I had to prove myself to my colleagues and my peers, my professors, who were all white in most cases, that I'm just as good or I'm putting forth the same work. I wasn't freed from that mentality until I said this concert changed my career that I just showed you all, where I can authentically be me. I mean, sitting through an organ concert and not feeling this is dreadful for even me as an organist. And I would play some works, I felt nothing. I can play all the notes and I feel nothing. Now, I mean, gratefully, now as an artist or a concert artist, I play through a whole program in my head and I think of the affect of the program. I think, how would the audience react? I think of what moment do I want to create? Do I want to create this design? Do I want to create this design? Do I want to create this design? And if you can go through last night, it was more of this design. There were many high moments, there were many low moments, but then at the end, it started to crescendo all the way up there. So you had some of that. And I think about that when I'm playing music now, and I don't ever perform music now that I don't feel here. If I can't feel it, I can't send the message to you all and bring you in with me. One of the greatest performances, there are some performances that really resonate and I will never ever forget. My debut at the Walt Disney Concert Hall in LA. That was a rock concert. The place was packed. I don't know why. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why it was packed. But the reaction and the response from the room, it gave me so much adrenaline. I think I was on a high in that concert. I mean, it was so much fun. They were applauding mid-piece, which is atypical for organ. You sit here like this until the piece is over for classical concerts. They were applauding. I mean, I think I played 2 encores that night. It was a fun, and that also clicked with me as well, saying, you have to speak to the audience. I mean, the canon is great. I love the canon, like I say. Even J.S. Bach, prior to studying at Eastman, there was a time when I did not play Bach at all. All I heard was running 16th notes. But when I got to Eastman, I learned rhetoric, I learned affect, I learned Baroque articulation, I learned Baroque performance practice. And Bach was actually saying something. There's lots of romanticism in Baroque music. And I got to appreciate and learn that. And now I play Bach, and I'm almost in tears sometimes playing the works of Bach. So to answer your question, I play through programs, and I always think, who am I playing to? Even yesterday's program, I knew I was playing at a Black conference. I know I was playing to majority students, and I was thinking, students who don't even know the instrument, how can I show off the instrument? How can I show off the artistry without boring the audience? Or if I played at Yale University for a bunch of cerebral organists, I'll play a completely different program. I'll play probably three 30-minute works, and they would appreciate that. But I always think about the audience, who I'm playing for, and cater to that audience.
You answered my question before I got to ask. I'm going to ask you another one. So this is on the technical side, and I'll just give a brief story. When I first attended Hampton University Ministers Conference in 2017, my first one, I was singing in the choir, and we did an arrangement of My Jesus, I Love Thee, arranged by Dr. Scott Cumberbatch, and Dr. Patrice Turner was leading it. And on the organ was Dr. Gumbs. And so I remember that moment. I put it on YouTube so you can find it on there. But we went, after the song ended, we went back into it like 2 more times. And my question is, because I didn't grow up with the pipe organ, I didn't even grow up with the B3 organ in Defuniak Springs. So my question is, because someone like me was not introduced to that, and if I want to get into that in the Black sphere, how does the keyboardist, the Hammond B3 organist, and then also the pipe organist know what to do without stepping on each other's toes? What must happen?
That's great. Many times people see that monstrous instrument, 4 keyboards, all these knobs, pedals, buttons, all this stuff, and they shy away from it. And the most fun I have is bringing, when you get a chance to Google Woolsey Hall for Yale University, and that's one of the largest instruments, one of the greatest instruments in the world, I would say. But it's all one of the largest instruments. And one of the joys I have is bringing my friends who play the B3 or play the piano and put them on the organ bench. Like, no, bro, I ain't doing that. I'm like, bro, be yourself. It's the same keys, the same pedal board, everything. I'll pull things for you. Once I do that, and to see the comfort set in, like, oh, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. And to overcome that fear, many times it's a commercial where somebody was scared to jump in the water, and they finally jumped in, and the water just touched their ankles. It's the same thing. That instrument is very intimidating, yes. It's a king of instruments, as they call it, sure. But however, the same passion, the same soul, the same fervor and heart for music that you have, bring it to that instrument. It can respond just as well as the B3 or the piano. Of course, all the technical stuff, stops and all that stuff, that'll come with study. But jump on it. Jump in the deep end. Or if you find an organ, ask somebody to lock you in it for 30 minutes. I never forget, I went to Notre Dame before the burning, of course, to hear Olivier Latry play the organ. And I had to flex. I said, I'm Nathaniel Gumbs. I study organ with David Higgs. I want to come see the organ. That man gave me the entire night in the cathedral alone with the instrument. And if you know American instruments versus French instruments, they're very different. But it's just jumping into the deep end and learning. And putting yourself out there. If you want to learn it, talk to folks, call folks. I want to come play the organ. I harass church organists all the time. I'm in town for so-and-so. I need to practice. Yeah, and get acquainted with the instrument. I mean, it's a lovely instrument. It's a dying instrument, but I'm very adamant about seeing instruments still stay on the scene, and also bringing more and more persons of color to the instrument. I'm so proud to say that it's a young man, Azriel Davis, who is from Oakwood University. He did his undergrad there. There was no organ program at Oakwood University. However, every time I went on the road with the Aeolians, I sent him an assignment. We found an organ to go to, and he is now completing his master's in organ at Syracuse University. So I'm glad to say that one of my goals now is to be an influence on African American musicians who do not have the resources or the church resources to learn the instrument, but have a desire to. Thank you. Sorry for that.
I hope you'll come to the recital tonight featuring Dr. Alexis Hazel and Dr. Albert Lee. It'll be fantastic. And then we have more lectures tomorrow, and we have a collaborative jazz, gospel, soul concert tomorrow right here at the FPAC. So thank you again. We'll see you tomorrow or tonight.